Hi. Today we're here with Melinda Knutson. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Can you tell us a little about your job?
Yes. Well, I'm a retired ecologist, and I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I was a regional ecologist for the Fish and Wildlife Service, which means I worked with our national wildlife refuges, which are places where our wildlife can live and thrive, and they're also used by a lot of fishermen and hunters to make use of our wildlife resources. So basically, I'm an expert on ecosystems and how they operate, which means the plants and the animals and the landscape working together. Mm-hmm. That's what I did for my job.
Did you have any role models that inspired you to become an ecologist?
Well, I guess as a child, I never knew any ecologists, but I did have an aunt who was very big into gardening, and we would go in, hunt for wild blackberries and things like that, and she was a really good gardener. She had strawberries. And then I grew up on a farm, and so I spent a lot of time outdoors with my aunt, and I grew to love nature out on the farm.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any favorite parts of your job?
My most favorite part was actually getting out on the land, and I'd work with our National Wildlife Refuge. Each refuge has a biologist at the refuge, and so I would work with those biologists to look at problems that they might have, like invasive species. That was a big one on our National Wildlife Refuges. So getting out to meet the biologists and work with them on the ground was my favorite part.
Okay. How would someone, if anyone wanted to be an ecologist like you, how would they start their career?
Well, in school, like in grade school and high school, you would want to take a lot of science and math classes. That's really important to get a good solid basis, because it's a science, and so excuse me, the mathematics is used in modeling, and a lot of ecologists become modelers. So you'd want to get really good grades in science and math classes, and then when you went to college, you could major in biology. You could also major in statistics. We use a lot of statisticians to help us analyze our data. So I think that's the basic preparation. The other thing that would be important to do, I think, once you got into, say, college, would be to volunteer at a National Wildlife Refuge, mm-hmm. or at a Department of Natural Resources office. And they use volunteers in the summertime a lot to help them collect data and things like that. And then you'd get a chance to see what the job was like and talk to people who had that kind of job. I think that's really important.
When you were a kid, did you maybe want to do something else for a job before you decided you want to be a naturalist?
Well, I wanted to be a nurse, so actually I was trained as a nurse and practiced as a nurse as well. And I also thought about medical school, but in the end, I ended up changing careers. I became a nurse, and then I changed careers because I missed working in the outdoors and working with nature. So, yeah.
And do you think there are any special environments?
Well, there's a lot of special environments. Here in the Driftless Area, and the Driftless means that the glaciers that came across North America didn't actually grind off the landscape right around here. So we have a lot of special habitats. Some of the ones that you might notice when you're driving down the road are goat prairies. Do you know what a goat prairie is? Mm-hmm. It's those very steep and hot little prairies that are up at the tops of our bluffs. And they're sort of remnants of what the landscape would have looked like prior to European settlement. The Native Americans used to burn the landscape to keep it open for their game animals. And of course, after European settlement, we didn't use fire very much, and so the forests have kind of closed in. But there's some rare plants and some rare animals that live in those goat prairies. Uh-huh. Some of our first-order streams are where the cold water flows out of the bluffs and makes a little stream at the very tops of those. We have a unusual little bird called the Louisiana water thrush. So that's kind of a special habitat as well.
Okay.
And our cold freshwater streams are really valuable in this area, and they're used for trout fishing. So trout like the water cold, and because our water flows right out of the bluff, where it's kept cold inside all those rocks, it creates a habitat for trout, which is available in a lot of other places.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then for a final question, what has been your favorite part about your career as an ecologist?
Well, I've met a lot of really interesting people, and I've seen a lot of really beautiful landscapes. Just even though I didn't work in the Southwest, I've visited some of the refuges in the Southwest, and that's of course a very different kind of landscape. It's very dry there. There's a cactus, and it's very different than the Midwest. So seeing some of those different habitats across the country has been really interesting, and also seeing some of the animals that are associated with those. So I think that's been the best part of my career.
Okay. Thank you for answering our questions that we've wondered about what it would be like to be a naturalist for us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me.